derivative right is basically something where you're using an existing original art or piece of music and making something new out of it. So the derivative work also has a copyright in it. So now I can make derivative works from my own music. There's nothing stopping me from doing it because it's my original work, right? But if someone else wants to make a derivative work of my music, it could be the composition, it could be the lyrics, or it could be using the original sound recording. So how do you go about something like that? So sampling basically, remixes and remakes are considered derivative works. A cover is not considered a derivative work, which is, there is a lot of debate and there's a lot of gray area on this because, you have a lot of songs that come out which are being called a cover, but kind of, it's gone completely different from the original composition. So is that a remake and is it a remix? So now to address this, I think it'll be a really, I'd like to take some examples. So now, for example, sampling and remixing and remake, all of them require the same set of permissions. You need to get permission from the owner of the sound recording as well as the owner of the composition slash lyrics, right? Because you're going to be using the original sound recording to either remix or remake or sample it. Sampling would be something like, say, for example, in Black Eyed Peas, one of the older songs, they've used a sample from an old Tamil song. So it's a sound recording which they have used, but it would have probably fallen into the public domain. The composition would have fallen into public domain. So the permissions that they have taken have been from the label. Or it could be that the label also owns the composition because back then, 2012 amendment wasn't there. So they would have, gotten the composer and the lyricist to like assign all rights to the label and they would have owned everything. So it's a one-shot permission for it. And even in today's day and age, for that matter, most of the film songs that are released in Bollywood, or for that matter, across the Indian film industry, the labels own all rights. Except for the fact that if you're registered with a copyright society, you can claim composer royalties that accrue from it. But I will get into that a little later because that's another topic altogether. But yeah, so if you need to sample a song that is existing today, more often than not, it will be a label or a publisher who you need to approach to take permission from. And that same goes for like remixing or remaking a song. So an example would also be, I'm sure so many 90s remakes are coming today in Bollywood, like almost like every second song is a remake of a 90s Bollywood song, right? And there's a good reason why it's so easy for them to do it because 90% of them are owned by the same label. And that same label is releasing it again. So they don't need to take permission from anyone. And I think the most hated example is probably Masakali, where they, ended up killing that song. And it was perhaps the most disliked video at that point of time. But it was easy for the label to do it because they don't really need permission from the composer because, it came out before 2012. And the label owned all rights, that is to the composition, to the lyrics, and to the sound recording. So they just hired a producer, paid him an amount, got him to remake the song, and released it. So that is how you go about, taking permissions to do all of this. No, obviously, if you are an individual musician who wants to put out all of this, these are the permissions that you need to take. Now, the question that I constantly get is that, you have so many of these remakes and remixes, which are just put out there on SoundCloud. I'm sure they haven't taken permission, right? Now, the important point is that the enforcement of copyright is the prerogative of the copyright holder. Now, if I am the copyright holder, if I choose not to pursue a case, then I just, that guy got lucky. But in terms of putting it up on YouTube, if there is an existing content ID which matches with this file that you have uploaded, then YouTube can pull it down. Because, they have a very elaborate, it's like a fingerprinting system which they have kind of, mapping against what is already there on the system. So if a T-Series song is playing, which has been uploaded a few years back on YouTube, and I am, an amateur DJ or an electronic music producer, I take that song and I add a few beats and I've sampled it or I've remixed it or I've remade it. basically using the original sound recording, and I've uploaded it on YouTube. YouTube is going to run a check and say, okay, I found a conflicting content ID with this, and T-Series will get a copyright notice saying that there is somebody who has got a conflicting thing, and I will get notified saying that your video or your content is going against this existing content ID, and either you cannot monetize it or you have to pull it down. So more often than not, they just leave it as you keep it on, but you can't monetize. But if you go back and if you check, you'll still see ads running on the video. The reason being that these large labels have an agreement with YouTube where they can still monetize on your video, but you can't make money out of it, which is okay. I mean, fair enough. We have taken something without their consent and used it. And but a lot of times, even after they have taken permission, they still have these copyright issues. And I think that's like YouTube's algorithm kind of, goes a little haywire once in a while. So I think everyone's like trying to figure out how that works. And obviously, permissions in terms of making a cover, therefore, are very different. So a cover is something, any version of the song that you create, which does not include the sound recording, is a cover. So if today Ed Sheeran's Shape of You, if I decide to sing that song and record it with just me singing plain and I have someone playing the guitar, I don't need to take permission from the label, so to speak, or from the person who owns the sound recording. I just need to take permission from the person who owns the composition. Because what I am doing is I am reproducing the composition and not the sound recording. So which is why it's not considered a derivative work, so to speak, because it's not derivative work from a sound recording perspective. It's just and neither is it considered a derivative from the composition perspective, because I've not created anything new, so to speak. I have taken the same tune, I have just sung it again. It's just that I have maybe not added instruments. I've just the stripped down version of it. So, another very popular example of it is PJ Morton's How Deep Is Your Love, which won the Grammy as well. And I think I've had this discussion as to how is it not a remake, because it's so vastly different from the original, and it's almost like a genre change. So how is that different? But it is, I mean, like, it is different from a genre perspective and from arrangement, but the tune is the same, the lyrics are the same, and it's just that they've arranged it differently. So it continues to be a cover. And it also won. So obviously they've taken the necessary permissions in terms of, having it, sanctioned by the original songwriters. Now, so I think that pretty much covers the kind of permissions that you need to take. And the exceptions would be, again, like I said, there's so much of gray area that the exceptions are also kind of murky. But the most clear-cut exceptions are obviously exceptions like, now, for example, during this session, if I used a song or if I sang a song to give you an example of what I am explaining, then it's an educational thing that's automatically exempted under, and it's like, the whole concept of fair use doctrine. The other thing would be if I'm reporting on a particular matter, and if I used a original work, or if I'm reporting on the original work and I've used it as a result. So basically on news channels, then you don't need to take permission for that. The third thing would be if I'm critiquing a particular artwork or a song, I don't need to take permission for that either. And it also applies to parodies. So I think the other myth is that you can use any sound recording, or you can use any composition as long as it's only 15 seconds. So this is it's like a misconception that's very rampant across the industry, and that's just a myth. If you use even 1 second without permission, that's technically still infringement. Whether the copyright holder chooses to act upon it or not is entirely the copyright holder's discretion. Before we get into that in detail, it's important to understand that there are certain kinds of royalties that you can collect when you own a copyright. So the most important one being performance royalties, followed by mechanical royalties and sync license royalties. So where copyright societies come in is they are the ones who collect performance royalties. So what are performance royalties, so to speak? It's like every time your work is being performed. So either a sound recording is being performed, and while the sound recording is being performed, your composition is also being performed, right? So there are two aspects of copyright that apply. Your performance royalties that come from the sound recording and performance royalties that come from the composition. Now, an IPRS is a copyright society that is registered in India to collect on behalf of people who are registered with them as composers or lyricists. So the composition side of performance royalties is what they collect. They're basically, a copyright society is a collective of um, musicians, or like, I mean, in the context of music, basically a collective of people who kind of act on behalf of each other. And that copyright society is registered under the Copyright Act. It's not a government body, but it has to be a registered copyright society for it to be able to collect on behalf of its members. And which is why they will collect a fee, or they're supposed to collect it as per the cue sheet, that is the list of songs that are being played at a particular place or being performed. They're supposed to calculate the fees that applies to each of those events based on that, and then distribute it among the members who were listed in those songs. So typically that's how it works. And the copyright societies abroad work a lot more efficiently because they are tech savvy. They have technology and systems that kind of allow them to feed into the cue sheets and keep track of them, because the people who are complying with it are also compliant, as opposed to India, where it's very, very difficult to get organizers to submit cue sheets, or even if they do, then the last minute there are changes, and it's just it's that much harder to keep track of. So as of now, how IPRS has been calculating fees, they have like an elaborate formula that's applied to it. There's like a weighted average, and like instances of like a prediction that, okay, this artist is going to be performed a lot more, so therefore we will collect on behalf of that artist. Like, and their website actually details out the kind of formulas that they use to calculate the performance fees. And obviously this applies to online concerts as well, because at the end of the day, it's a performance. So there was a bit of a debate in terms of what the fees would be. So though the IPRS has not come out with a clear indicator of what the fees is going to be right now, they have said that there will be fees applicable, but they will come out with the tariff rate in soon, shortly, and they'll release that. But to kind of sum it up, a copyright society is something that you need to be part of to be able to collect that aspect of your royalties. So performance royalties can be collected most of the time only through a copyright society. It's going to be very hard for an individual to go to each venue and ask for performance royalties that apply to his or her music. So if I was an artist, even if I was, say, Sonu Nigam, for me to go to each venue and keep track of the royalties that are accruing to me at each of those places does not make any sense. It makes sense for me to be part of a community where there are people hired to represent me and go and collect on my behalf. So I don't like using the Indian copyright societies as an example because they've worked not that great so far. I'm hoping things are going to change. But abroad, especially in America and Europe, it's very, very like elaborate, and they have like a very systematic procedure in place where, even at a film set, if you're using songs playing in the background, you need to submit a cue sheet so that you can pay the appropriate license fees to the copyright society, and the musicians get, credited accordingly. So there's like a quarterly or a biannual payout cycle. So it's important to register with the Copyright Society, and I know that currently the Indian situation is not that great, but that shouldn't deter musicians from doing it. A lot of people want to know what happens if they are not registered with the Copyright Society. Does it mean that the Copyright Society is not collecting on their behalf? Technically, copyright societies collect on behalf of unregistered members as well, which means there is money that is being accrued on the table, and they keep it for a period of 3 years. And if you do not register with them within that 3-year period, it goes back into the distribution pool and it's distributed across the existing members of the copyright society. So, I mean, in the Indian context, you have labels also who are members of IPRS because they own publishing rights, right? So IPRS allows publishers to register with them, and also allows composers and lyricists to register with them. So, which is why I keep telling the clients that I work with, artists who are based out of India, that there is money being collected on your behalf and it's going to labels if you're not registered with the Copyright Society. So please go ahead and do it.